Well, it's all too worrying, and I just wonder if Trump's finally realised that it's rather serious, and it isn't going to go away with just a bombing of any site where nuclear weapons might be being built. But also, I think he realises now that he's got a very weak chap in Pete Hegseth heading up the military.
Pause. Should we just pause for a moment? He appoints people who are absolutely appalling, because the only way in which he can sustain power is to surround himself with complete incompetence.
In this video, James O'Brien silences these callers' insane delusions live. And what starts as a jittery concern about Trump's handling of foreign policy just quickly spirals into full-blown chaos. This caller just starts floating half-formed worries, casually dropping Pete Hegseth as head of the military, and assumes that Trump is just now waking up to global stakes. But James doesn't let it slide. He immediately rips into Trump's appointment strategy, calling out the circus of incompetence surrounding him. And yeah, once he connects the dots between Fox News figureheads and actual defense roles, it's game over. So make sure to watch to the end to see how James O'Brien silences these callers' insane delusions live.
But then suddenly they matter. Their job matters. And you're right, he's got this Fox News host in the Defense Department and this Kremlin apologist in the Intelligence Department. It's extraordinary.
And if you think of the parade he had on Saturday, that organised by Hegseth, it wasn't exactly a success. It wasn't North Korea or China or even Red Square.
No, it was. It reminded me of Kidderminster Carnival in about 1978.
Without the catch and quick cops.
Yeah, exactly that. When Mum dressed me up as a lion using old zippers to make me a mane. So what's he going to do?
Well, I suppose not doing anything is going to save lives. I wish I knew. I hate looking at Benjamin Netanyahu, and I could say some pretty horrible things which aren't very,
Yes, of course. I mean, there's plenty of people saying horrible things about Benjamin Netanyahu. A borderless narcissist is what one Knesset member called him yesterday.
They're trying to stay out of prison, aren't they?
Yes, of course. Okay, so that's, I don't know what that is. It's an abstention, I think, Gay, almost, and that's kind of the point. But I need to push people a little harder than that. And remember, I'm saying I don't think he will join in on this one, but I'm also saying this doesn't go on my great list of predictions, which I can make based upon understanding things, and I often understand things thanks to your help. But on this one, I don't think there's anything to understand.
So I agree with you that he's not going to go into this war, and personally I think that's a good thing. I was a British soldier until 4 years ago, and nobody who's ever been to war or fought in any military capacity ever wants to start another unwinnable war. The only people who want to start wars and go into wars tend to be armchair generals in the media or in our political systems. And I think I have a lot of respect. I don't say this often, but for Trump I have a lot of respect for him, because the pro-Israeli lobby is very, very powerful in the US and here in the UK. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu has kind of pushed himself too far, and now the world sees that following Israel's lead all the time is not good for the world.
So James opens this one up with quiet control. After the first caller expresses concern about Trump's handling of foreign policy, James just shifts the whole focus towards something more serious. How much damage can come from surrounding yourself with loyalists instead of capable leaders? He highlights the deeper problem here. When global stakes rise, the people holding key positions actually matter. And in Trump's case, these positions were often filled with unqualified figures tied more to media than expertise. And what makes this moment land is how James doesn't treat it as a one-off. He stays on it and building on that argument. And by the time the next caller joins in, James is already laying the groundwork for a wider critique, not just of one decision, but of an entire pattern. It's not just about avoiding war, it's about how the people in charge shape that outcome before it even reaches that point.
He's not sanctioned Israel really in any way, and despite the early reports that they'd known nothing about what happened last weekend, it's pretty clear now that they knew everything about what happened last weekend. So they may not have joined in, but they certainly did nothing to stop it.
It's challenging for people because I don't know how much you know about U.S. politics, but there's a group called AIPAC, and they used to be called ASMPAC. They're very powerful. That's why Joe Biden, despite what he said, he's fearful of that lobby because they have a lot of money. And
they have a lot of influence. Of course, they do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same here in the UK. With the Conservative Friends of Israel group, where you have people like Priti Patel. She went on a jolly mission and never got punished for it. I spent time in the Conservative Party as an activist, and I know generally how powerful the pro-Israel lobby here is in the UK.
Right? I think most people listening to this program do. I know you're not claiming any particular levels of unique insight, but it is obviously a well-drilled observation. And if Donald Trump were to defy the wishes of the Israeli administration and many of their supporters outside of Israel, then I can see why you would admire him. It wouldn't matter whether he was doing it for reasons of self-interest or principle. You would get the result that you wanted to see, and many people want to see the same result. I don't know why. Well, that doesn't explain why you think he won't go in with Israel.
So he doesn't want to. If you look at over the last few days, people like Tucker Carlson and the other.
Steve Bannon has come out against Netanyahu as well, I think.
Yeah, even Joe Rogan, who is credited as being the podcasters who kind of pushed him to reach a new audience to get elected. They've turned against him. They don't want to see a foreign war. They don't want to see another country and America being brought, because just bombing from the air that doesn't win wars. No country has ever won a war just by bombing from the air. You have to physically be there, and there's no solution. Just bombing a reactor or a nuclear facility doesn't mean that the regime will capitulate. And who have they got to replace it? They've got the Shah, the Pahlavis, the Shah's son. They're a dictatorship. That's why Iran hates Israel, because at the time of the Shah, the Israelis were the best friends of the Shah, helping train the Shah's torture teams and regime thugs to keep. And I'm not saying the IRGC or anybody, the mullahs, are any better, but there's a genuine reason why the Iranians hate the Israelis. There is, if somebody tortured your family or your grandparents.
So this caller comes in trying to offer a broader perspective. He brings up lobbying power, references AIPAC, and even points to figures like Priti Patel and Biden to frame the conversation. And for a moment, it sounds like he's building towards something more grounded. But then it just starts shifting. He leans on that idea that Trump deserves credit simply for not jumping into war, and framing it as some kind of bold stand against Netanyahu. It is a stretch, especially when it turns into praise rather than critique. And James keeps the tone steady. He acknowledges the reality of lobbying pressure, but doesn't let that distract from the core issue. Trump's choices are rarely about principle, and often are about calculations or chaos. The caller tries to reinforce his point by bringing up names like Tucker Carlson, Bannon, and Joe Rogan, as if their disapproval somehow adds weight. But it just ends up sounding more like a summary of our conservative media's drifting than a real defense of Trump's leadership. And James doesn't need to push that hard here. The contradictions just speak for themselves.
We've covered a lot of that this week, and the split among Iranian opposition to the administration between people who would welcome any intervention that toppled the regime and people who desperately desire the toppling of the regime but absolutely don't want it to be facilitated or achieved by Israel, whether alongside the United States of America or not. I mean, I would remind you of the 1953 coup in Iran, which was essentially masterminded by the United States, the TP Ajax project, and the UK were in lockstep with the States on that. I needed a bit of a crash course on that particular chapter yesterday after a caller brought it to my attention. But and I mention it only because once you start tugging at the threads of history, almost any opinion can fall apart. And looking at why he might not do this now, I think you've hit upon the biggest. button, which would be because the people whose adulation he craves, if you want to be psychological about it, or whose support he needs, if you want to be political about it, are at best split and at worst opposed, and that may define which direction he goes in. Thank you, John.
I think personally, Trump's got two reasons for giving himself some time. No decision should be made on impulse. That's a sign of ADHD, and I don't think he has that. So he's a wise man.
Oh, shut up.
Listen, no.
Come on. What's your favourite example of his wisdom?
He's a businessman.
Well, he certainly played one. He played a businessman on The Apprentice. But give me your favourite example of his wisdom. I'm
not a businessman, and Mr. Trump is. He's sitting on billions. I don't think you are, or neither am I. So,
give me your favourite example of his wisdom.
He was the reason there was no war between India and Pakistan.
No, he wasn't.
So he called peace there.
No, he didn't.
He did.
Okay, all right. And as he found, didn't he find the cure for the common cold the next day as well?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh, no, the man's a genius. I take it all back. Seriously, I can't continue this conversation. Donald Trump is a wise man. What an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. And also the fact that he doesn't act on impulse. What about grabbing women by the genitals? Is that something that he gives lots of thought to before he actually does it, or is that perhaps something that involves acting on impulse?
Okay, I see where this is going. All right.
Well, it's going to his examples of his behaviour described by himself, as opposed to what you're doing, which is coming up with examples of things that have never happened.
He's given himself 2 weeks to make a decision, to take his country into war.
And wrapping this up, this last caller showed exactly how far Trump loyalists will go to spin nonsense into wisdom, claiming he's wise because he's rich or waited 2 weeks. Come on, James barely had to try here. He just let the contradictions crash into each other. And at the end of the day, these aren't arguments. They're just people clinging to a narrative that's already fallen apart. The only thing keeping it upright is bias. And the second James touches it, the whole thing just unravels completely. And speaking of bias,
are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.